Lightning flashed outside our living room window, illuminating the evening sky with jagged brilliance. I'd never cared much for storms, but on that particular night, the tempest raging outside matched the chaos simmering inside me. My wife's phone buzzed on the coffee table, insistent, urgent. Absent-mindedly, I glanced at the screen, only to freeze when the preview revealed an airline confirmation message, all bold letters and flight details. A chill swept over me, prickling the nape of my neck. She hadn't mentioned any upcoming trip. My heart pounded, torn between guilt at invading her privacy and an undeniable wave of dread. Something was off, and this lightning-laced sky felt like a harbinger of the secret I was about to uncover. I snatched up the phone, compelled by equal parts curiosity and fear. Her passcode, which I knew from helping her set up banking apps, let me in. That's when I saw it, a round-trip ticket from our city's airport to a destination 2 states away. Departure in just under a week, returning the following Monday. My mind sputtered with questions. Why was she going? Who was she meeting? Work, maybe? But her calendar on the fridge said nothing about any business travel. My thoughts whirled, echoing the thunder outside, and I felt the growing certainty that this flight was something she didn't want me to know about. The front door rattled as wind beat against it, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Reality jolted me. My wife, Naomi, would be home any minute. She'd left to grab groceries before the storm worsened. With trembling hands, I powered off her screen and placed the phone back where I'd found it. My stomach churned with uneasy tension. I loved Naomi more than I could put into words, but seeing that confirmation felt like spotting the tip of a hidden iceberg. I'd never known her to hide anything this big. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, trying to calm the swell in my head. Wiping a damp palm on my jeans, I stared at the phone as though it might deliver more secrets. No more notifications came, but it hardly mattered. I'd already read enough to know something was amiss. A snap of thunder shook the house, and I exhaled, bracing for her return. I didn't want to leap to conclusions, but it felt impossible not to. There had to be an explanation, right? When Naomi finally walked through the door, hair wet from the rain, bags of produce in hand, I tried to act normal. Tried and mostly failed. "Hey," she greeted me, cheeks flushed from the cold, stepping around the puddle forming under her boots. "This storm is crazy. Can you help me with the groceries?" "Yeah," I managed, my voice sticking in my throat. "Sure." She frowned, setting the paper bags down on the kitchen counter. "Everything okay? You look pale." I forced a thin, unconvincing smile. "I'm fine. Just startled by the thunder." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded, perhaps chalking up my tremor to the storm. And so we went about our routine, unloading apples, eggs, pasta, like nothing was wrong. But my heart refused to settle. I felt like I was lying to her just by keeping quiet, yet I had no idea how to bring it up. "Hey, honey, so I saw you're flying out next week, care to explain?" It sounded accusatory even in my imagination. The very concept of snooping also filled me with shame. That night, I barely slept. The wind howled outside, lashing the trees, and I lay in bed, staring at the dim shapes in our bedroom. Naomi breathed evenly beside me, lost in slumber. I envied her calm. My mind reeled, conjuring scenarios. Could it be a surprise trip for me? An anniversary gift or something? But our anniversary was 3 months away. And a surprise gift would be an odd reason to keep me in the dark about flights. Or maybe something tragic happened in her family and she was dreading telling me. We'd always had open communication, or so I believed. Now I felt on the brink of discovering an alternate reality. Morning arrived, bringing gray clouds but no more thunder. Naomi stirred, gave me a sleepy smile, and padded off to make coffee while I showered. I stepped under the hot water, letting it cascade over my shoulders, hoping it would clear my head. Instead, I was bombarded with images, her stepping onto a plane alone, me not knowing where she was going or why. My chest constricted with anxiety. Once dressed, I joined her in the kitchen, where she was sipping her coffee and scrolling through social media on her phone, an image so normal that I wanted to scream. "Crazy night, huh?" she mused, yawning. "Kept me up a bit." My laugh was hollow. "Yeah, me too." She reached for my hand across the table. "You sure you're okay?" Her concern was genuine. "You look like you barely slept." I forced a gentle squeeze of her fingers. "I'm just not feeling great," I lied. Probably didn't help that the storm woke me up every hour. That seemed to appease her. "Maybe you can come home early, rest up," she offered. "I'll be stuck at the office till late, but I'll try to get home as soon as I can." I nodded. Sure. We'll see how the day goes. Inside, I ached at how easy it was to keep the conversation superficial. This was the woman I'd built my life around, and here I was, letting secrets gnaw at me. But I still lacked a plan. Part of me felt it might be best to gather more information before confronting her. Another part insisted honesty was always the best path. I dreaded the possibility that the truth was something catastrophic, an affair, maybe? My gut lurched at the thought. I had never suspected her of anything like that, but how else could I interpret a mysterious flight? Naomi left for work soon after, and as soon as the door shut behind her, I sat down heavily on the couch. My day job was flexible. I worked freelance for a small marketing firm as a copywriter, so my deadlines were self-managed. That meant I had the entire day to wrestle with the question, do I investigate or do I ask her outright? Anxiety clawed at me. In a sudden burst, I found myself searching our shared filing cabinet for any travel documents. Nothing. I checked the desk drawers. Also nothing. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked both guilty and desperate. I realized how quickly suspicion could turn a person into someone they barely recognize. Still, I couldn't let it go. Eventually, I forced myself to sit at my laptop, trying to plow through a client project. The hours passed in a blur of half-finished sentences and anxious daydreams. Every so often, I'd glance at my phone, half hoping Naomi would text me something like, "I have big news to share," but all that came was a quick note about dinner, asking if I could pick up some ground turkey. My chest tightened again, and frustration boiled over. She was talking about turkey while an airline ticket loomed in the background? A turning point came late in the afternoon, when, in a fit of helplessness, I found myself searching my laptop's email for any mention of plane tickets. We had a shared travel folder from past vacations, maybe she'd used the same aggregator. Nothing turned up. But then, a fleeting thought, what if the confirmation was in her personal email? That would require me to know her password. Did I know it? She'd given me the password once to print an itinerary for a trip we took ages ago. My memory was fuzzy, but I recalled a phrase, a variation of her childhood pet's name plus some numbers. I told myself it was an invasion of privacy. But the curiosity and worry were too strong, an itch I couldn't resist scratching. Hand trembling, I tried a guess. The password was invalid. My heart pounded, and I typed a second guess. Invalid again. I was about to give up, feeling sick with guilt, when I recalled the year her pet died. On a hunch, I typed the name plus that year, pressing enter. My breath caught as it accepted. This was wrong, I knew it. But I also felt a surge of relief that at least I'd get some clarity. Inside her inbox, I scanned the subject lines, searching for anything referencing flights or e-tickets. Sure enough, there it was, near the top, your flight confirmation, 2 passengers. My stomach somersaulted. 2 passengers? I hovered over the email in shock. This implied she wasn't traveling alone. My eyes darted to the sender, a well-known airline. I swallowed hard. I clicked it open, fear and adrenaline thrumming in equal measure. My mind reeled at the words, 2 seats departing next Wednesday, returning Monday. Destination, Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck? We lived on the East Coast, and I couldn't recall a single time she'd even mentioned that area. The passenger names, her own, and a certain Laura Connor. I frowned, didn't ring a bell. Possibly a friend or a co-worker? The seats were in economy. No reason for alarm there, but the second passenger was definitely not me. A deep, resounding ache built in my chest. She was going on a trip next week with someone I'd never heard of and hadn't told me. Why would she keep it a secret? My mind cycled through possibilities. Maybe it was a surprise girls' trip? But why Bismarck? Maybe it was for some specialized training or workshop at her job. That might explain the co-worker, except Naomi always told me about conferences. And anyway, Laura Connor might not even be a co-worker. I scanned the rest of the email. A mention of rental car arrangements, a single hotel reservation with 2 queen beds. The length of the stay suggested something more than a casual weekend. The worst part? The phrase, "if you have any questions about your romantic getaway," popped up in a promotional snippet at the bottom, standard airline marketing for couples. My cheeks flamed with anger and fear, even though I knew it might just be an automated message. Still, it stung. Head pounding, I backed out of her email and stared at the screen. My relationship with Naomi was built on honesty, or so I'd believed. Now I felt as though the ground under my feet was crumbling. If she was planning a romantic rendezvous, it would explain the secrecy. Yet, as soon as that thought formed, my stomach recoiled. Naomi had never given me any reason to suspect such betrayal. She was the sort of woman who left encouraging notes in my lunch bag, who always texted me if she'd be home late, who listened intently to my frustrations about freelance clients. Could she have changed so drastically? I forced myself to close her email, logged out, and shut my laptop. My entire body shook. I'd found answers, and those answers only led to more terrifying questions. Something in me whispered that maybe I should calmly confront her, ask who Laura Connor was, and see how she reacted. Yet a second voice told me to glean more details first. If this was truly something nefarious, I might need evidence. The thought of playing detective made my skin crawl, but the fear of being blindsided was worse. The next few days, I lived in a heightened state of anxiety. Naomi and I continued our usual routines, cooking dinners, watching a show before bed, but I felt like I was acting in a play. My lines were scripted, my gestures forced. She seemed normal enough, except for an undercurrent of tension I might have been imagining. Each time I thought about the upcoming Wednesday, I felt panic. I found myself double-checking her phone for updates. The flight's departure time was 9 a.m. She never said a word about taking time off from her job, but perhaps she had arranged vacation days in secret. By Monday, I was on the verge of meltdown. My rational side told me to communicate before the situation escalated. But an irrational fear, of losing her, of discovering the worst, kept me silent. That night, as we lay in bed, I stared at the dark ceiling. Her breathing told me she wasn't asleep either. Summoning courage, I shifted to face her. "Hey, you still awake?" She murmured softly, "Yeah. What's up?" I hesitated, pulse throbbing in my ears. "Are you sure everything's okay with you lately?" My question was intentionally vague, but it was all I could manage. Her body tensed. "What do you mean?" I swallowed. "You just seem different. Like something's on your mind." I couldn't see her face well in the darkness, but I sensed her eyes flickering with caution. "Work's been stressful, that's all," she said after a moment. "I'm sorry if I've seemed off." I bit the inside of my cheek. There it was again, a half-truth, maybe. I almost told her I knew. That I'd seen the flight confirmation. But the words refused to come. Instead, I mumbled something about hoping her stress would ease soon. She sighed, said she loved me, and turned away, hugging a pillow. I lay there for a long time, feeling the ache of unspoken secrets. Tuesday arrived, a day that felt like the countdown to an explosion. My hands shook when I tried to type on my laptop, and my coffee tasted bitter. Naomi left the house early, not even stopping for breakfast. She said she had a big meeting at the office. My mind, strung taut, conjured images of her finalizing travel details for tomorrow's flight. The thought made me physically ill. I realized I couldn't let her just vanish with no confrontation. I needed to do something. That afternoon, I impulsively decided to drive to her workplace. I wanted to see if there were any outward signs of a conference or if I could figure out who Laura Connor might be. Yes, it was borderline stalking, but I felt desperate. She worked in a mid-sized architecture firm downtown. I'd been there many times for her company parties. Parking across the street, I tried to quell the sense that I was crossing lines I might never be able to uncross. Around 4:30 p.m., employees began streaming out, heading home. I perched in my car, scanning faces. My heart nearly stopped when I spotted Naomi stepping outside with a woman I didn't recognize, a tall, slender brunette who held a thick portfolio against her chest. They were deep in conversation, their expressions serious. Could this be Laura Connor? They parted ways at the curb. Naomi headed toward her own car, while the other woman hurried down the street. If I wanted answers, I had to act. My nerves spiked as I jumped out of my vehicle, jogging to catch up with the brunette. She noticed me approaching, frowning with mild apprehension. "Hi," I said, breathless, sounding ridiculous. I'm sorry to bother you. You work with Naomi, right?" She glanced down the street, clearly on guard. "Yes, I do. Who are you?" I wiped rain off my forehead, the drizzle had started again. "I'm her husband. Look, I was wondering if are you named Laura, by any chance?" The woman's eyes widened. "Laura? No, my name's Stephanie." "Why?" My heart lurched. "So not her. Naomi mentioned someone named Laura at her firm, and I was curious if that was you." She shook her head slowly, definitely unsettled by my random questioning. "Sorry, I'm not sure who Laura is. We do have a big staff, but that name doesn't ring a bell. Maybe she's new, or from another branch." I nodded, lips pressed tight. "Could be. Sorry for the confusion." Thanks anyway. Stephanie gave me a polite but wary half-smile and hurried off. I stood there in the drizzle, feeling more foolish than ever. Clearly, Naomi's co-worker wasn't the second passenger. Or if she was, it wasn't this woman. I trudged back to my car, soaking wet and no closer to the truth. When I reached home, Naomi's car was already in the driveway. My gut clenched with guilt, as though I'd been the one sneaking around. She was in the kitchen, rummaging in the fridge for ingredients. I tried to greet her normally, but the tension was thick. We made small talk about dinner. She seemed subdued, glancing at her phone more often than usual. My sense of dread mounted. Was she expecting some final confirmation about tomorrow? Finally, as we sat down with our plates of pasta, I couldn't contain it any longer. The sight of her phone face down on the table next to her silverware made me sweat. Every time the screen lit up, I wanted to snatch it and see. The frustration built until my resolve broke. "Naomi," I said, voice low but urgent. "I need to ask you something." She paused mid-bite. "Okay," concern etched across her brow. My palms were clammy. "I saw an airline confirmation on your phone," I confessed, words stumbling out in a rush. "I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have looked. But it was right there. You never told me you were flying anywhere. And it said 2 passengers." Her face drained of color. She set down her fork with a trembling hand. For a moment, she just stared at me, as though trying to gauge how much I knew. My heart hammered, waiting for her explanation. "Please, just tell me the truth," I murmured. "Who is Laura Connor?" Naomi's eyes darted away, tears threatening. She pressed her lips together, exhaling shakily. "Okay," she said at last, voice quivering. "I was going to tell you. I just needed to figure out the timing." I swallowed hard. "Tell me what?" She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding band anxiously. "She's my half-sister." A stunned silence settled over us. I felt my jaw go slack. Half-sister? Naomi had an older brother, but I'd never heard anything about a half-sibling. Slowly, she continued, her voice shaky. "I found out a month ago. My father had an affair years before he died. It was complicated, but apparently a daughter resulted, and she was kept secret from our family. Laura's mother passed away recently, leaving a note that revealed the truth. That's how Laura discovered my existence. She reached out to me through an old lawyer who had my father's will. It was a shock, and I didn't know how to tell you." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "We've been emailing. We decided to meet in Bismarck, halfway between her place and ours." My heartbeat thundered in my ears, but now for a completely different reason than I'd expected. "You have a half-sister," I repeated, dazed. "So the flight is to meet her?" Naomi nodded, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "We wanted a neutral spot, away from our daily lives, so it wouldn't feel like too much pressure. We're not sure if we want to form a relationship or just get closure. But she agreed to meet me. I bought 2 seats because she asked if she could bring a friend for emotional support, or if I wanted to bring someone. I wasn't sure if I wanted you there yet, or if I'd go alone. That's why I used the second passenger slot under her name, so she could bring a friend if needed." I let that sink in, mind spinning. My chest tightened with a confusing mix of relief, guilt, and shock. Relief that it wasn't an affair, that she wasn't sneaking away with someone in a romantic sense. Guilt that I'd suspected her of betrayal. Shock that she had a half-sister she'd never mentioned. My voice emerged hoarse. "Why didn't you tell me as soon as you found out?" She sniffled, burying her face in her hands. "Because I was scared. I'd always believed my dad was a good man, that he never cheated on my mom. Finding this out felt like my whole childhood was a lie. I felt ashamed of him, and somehow ashamed of myself. I was reeling from it, and I didn't want to burden you until I knew if it was real. Then once I confirmed it, I was afraid you'd judge my father's memory, or that you'd push me to meet her right away. I wasn't ready. I'm sorry." My stomach twisted with empathy. Naomi's father died nearly a decade ago, and I knew how she revered his memory. This secret must have shattered her illusions. I reached across the table, clasping her hands gently. "Naomi," I murmured, heartbreak tinging my words, "I wish you'd told me. I would never judge you or your dad's memory. I've been so worried. I thought," my voice broke off, and I swallowed the rest. Telling her I'd feared she was having an affair felt petty now. She gave me a watery smile. "I know. I'm sorry I handled it poorly. I wanted to go alone, or maybe with Laura's friend, just to keep it minimal. I still don't know how I feel about her or what this means for my family. I thought it might be easier to figure it out first, then tell you afterward, to avoid dragging you into my confusion. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. But we're supposed to handle confusion together, right? That's what marriage is for. She nodded, lip trembling. Yes. You're right. A heavy hush fell over us. I absorbed the swirl of conflicting emotions, relief that she wasn't hiding a romantic liaison, sorrow that she'd felt too scared to confide in me, and compassion for the bombshell of a secret that upended her sense of self. I got up, moved around the table, and wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me, sobbing quietly into my shoulder. For a while, neither of us spoke, letting the moment of raw vulnerability wash over us. Eventually, I guided her to the couch, setting our unfinished dinner aside. She pressed the tissue to her eyes, sniffling. I guess you want to ask me a million questions now. I exhaled. Yeah, but only if you're ready. I don't want to pry if you're still processing. She gave a broken laugh. I think I'm done with secrets. So we talked, about how she discovered the truth, the letter from Laura's mother, the legal documents that proved paternity. About Naomi's confusion, anger, and curiosity. About the plan to meet in Bismarck because it was roughly equidistant from each of them. Laura lived in Montana, near the Dakotas border. Naomi had never been to that region. The second passenger on the itinerary was an option for either me or Laura's friend, as they hammered out details. But as the date loomed, Naomi said she panicked about telling me. She wasn't ready for all the questions, so she just stayed silent, hoping she could do it quietly and come home with answers. She insisted her intention wasn't to permanently hide it from me, just delay it until she was emotionally prepared. I wrapped my arms around her again, feeling the tension still present in her slender frame. This is huge, I said gently, but I want to be there for you. I'm sorry if you felt you couldn't share it with me. I love you, Naomi. She stared at me, eyes shimmering. I love you, too. I just got lost in my own turmoil. We spent the rest of the evening in deep conversation, with intermittent tears and quiet confessions. The flight was scheduled for tomorrow morning. She'd planned on leaving a note if she couldn't muster the courage to tell me in person. The heartbreak in her voice stung, but I forgave her because I saw how much pain she was in. It felt like a test of our marriage, but I also recognized it as a crisis in her personal identity. How do you tell your spouse that your deceased father had a secret child? Eventually, we turned the conversation to practical matters. Should she still go? Did she want me to come with her? She was torn. Part of her felt this was something she had to face alone first, forging a personal connection with Laura. Another part worried about the emotional toll of traveling by herself. I, too, was conflicted. My protective instinct screamed to accompany her, but I also respected her need for privacy in this bizarre, personal quest. Late into the night, we came to a tentative compromise. She would go alone but call me frequently, and if the meeting went well, I could fly out for the weekend to join them. We cancelled the second passenger listing for the flight. Laura had decided to come alone as well, apparently more comfortable forging a one-on-one bond. I felt a knot in my stomach at the thought of letting Naomi deal with this shock alone, but I also wanted to honor her boundaries. We parted for bed with a sense of uneasy truce. The secrets were out, but the Real journey was just beginning. The next morning, I drove her to the airport. Tension hovered in the car, thick as fog. She clutched a small carry-on in her lap, staring out the window at the passing buildings. I reached over to squeeze her hand. She gave a grateful, trembling smile. At the terminal curb, we embraced. My heart ached as I felt her body shake. Call me as soon as you land, I pleaded. She nodded, burying her face in my neck for a long moment before whispering, I will. Thank you for loving me, even when I stumble. Then she was gone, disappearing into the swirling crowd of travelers. Driving home alone, I felt a concoction of relief, anxiety, and emptiness. We'd cleared the immediate misunderstanding, but Naomi was off to face a life-altering revelation. The hours crawled by. I buried myself in work, ignoring the gnawing pit in my stomach. When my phone finally buzzed in the early afternoon, I snatched it up. Her voice came through, steady but subdued. She'd arrived, had a rental car, was on her way to the hotel. Laura would arrive the next day. They had each other's numbers. I offered encouragement and told her I missed her already. Over the following days, I lived in a bizarre emotional limbo. Naomi sent texts describing the small city, her hotel, her attempts to keep calm. Then, on Friday, I got the message I'd been waiting for, met with Laura. It went, well. She's shy, but we've shared pictures and stories. Can we FaceTime tonight? My chest fluttered with relief. That evening, the video call connected. Naomi's face filled the screen, looking drained but hopeful. She was in a modest hotel room with generic artwork behind her. "Hey," she said softly. "I'm okay." "What happened?" I asked. "How is she?" Naomi glanced to the side, as if unsure how to summarize. "We sat at a coffee shop for hours, just talking. She's 2 years older than me. She had no clue about me either. We're both kind of shell-shocked." A tremor of emotion flickered across her features. "But we connected on so many random things, food preferences, music tastes. It's weird how genetics can shape you. We even look similar in the eyes." I felt tears well up at the corners of my own eyes, touched by her wonder. "I'm happy for you," I whispered. "Really?" She smiled, shaky but genuine. "I appreciate that. Tomorrow we're going to drive around, maybe check out some local museums, talk more. Then I'll head back Monday." She paused, then added quietly, "I'm really sorry I kept this from you. But I'm also glad I made the trip." My throat felt thick. "It's okay. Just, let me know if you need anything." We ended the call with mutual declarations of love. Over the weekend, she texted updates. She and Laura laughed about a family recipe that their father apparently used to make. They compared some old photos. Tense moments arose when discussing how their mother figures might react, but they found cautious solidarity. I read each message eagerly, relieved that she was finding closure or perhaps a new bond, and also mourning the wedge her secrecy had temporarily driven between us. On Monday evening, I stood at the airport arrivals gate, anxiously scanning the faces of weary travelers. Finally, I spotted her weaving through the crowd, a small suitcase in tow. She looked the same but different, like she carried a heavier understanding of the world. When she saw me, her face lit up, and she hurried into my arms, hugging me so fiercely I could barely breathe. "How was it?" I managed, once I let her go. She gave a soft laugh, tears brimming. "Life-changing. Confusing. But I'm so glad I went." We grabbed her bag and headed to the car. All the way home, she talked, more open than I'd ever seen her. She told me how Laura was equally shell-shocked but kind, how they bonded over how their father's choices had shaped them unknowingly. They parted with a sense that they wanted to remain in each other's lives, at least as distant friends. "It'll take time," Naomi said, "but I feel a piece of me that was unsettled is calmer now." As for her father's memory, she said she felt sadness at the betrayal but also recognized that people are complicated, flawed. "He can still be the dad I loved, but also someone who made a huge mistake," she explained. "I just wish he were alive so I could ask him why." I listened, my hand on the steering wheel, my other hand occasionally squeezing hers. "I'm proud of you," I told her quietly, "for facing all this." She looked at me, her eyes swimming with gratitude. "Thank you for letting me do it my way. I promise I won't shut you out again." A wave of guilt and relief swept over me. "I shouldn't have snooped," I admitted. "I should have asked you as soon as I saw that notification." She smiled sadly. "Maybe I should have told you as soon as I got that first email from Laura. But it's okay. We've learned." That night, as we sat in our living room, the remnants of her suitcase scattered around, the storm of the previous week seemed distant. Naomi showed me pictures on her phone, selfies with Laura, snapshots of a local park, a half-sister whose eyes mirrored Naomi's own. I studied the resemblance, amazed that such a secret could exist. I thought about how secrecy almost tore us apart, but also how, in the end, the truth can bring unexpected blessings. Before bed, we cuddled under a blanket on the couch. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling her warmth against me. The lamp cast soft light on her thoughtful expression. "You okay?" I murmured. She nodded. "I am. I really am, for the first time since I got that letter. I feel freed." Then she turned her gaze to me. "And you?" I considered, recalling the torment of the past week. The confusion, suspicion, fear. "I'm okay, too," I answered. "I was terrified I was losing you, but we're here. We're stronger, if anything." She reached up, gently brushing my cheek with her fingertips. "We'll keep growing, together." I leaned in, pressing my forehead to hers, letting the closeness speak volumes. Outside, the night was still, the storm long gone. I felt an anchoring sense of calm. Yes, our relationship had faced a quake, revealing new fault lines. But maybe that's part of marriage, discovering cracks, finding ways to heal them, forging a deeper bond in the process. Eventually, we rose and headed to our bedroom, hand in hand. The covers felt soft against us as we slipped under them. I drifted off with the comfort of her presence by my side, her gentle breathing lulling me into dreams that, for once, were free of anxiety. In the following days, life continued, but with a new layer of openness between us. We talked freely about her half-sister, about the emotional aftermath of discovering such a secret. She messaged Laura occasionally, tentatively building a connection. Meanwhile, I found myself more attentive to her moods, determined never to let unspoken fears wedge us apart again. One afternoon, as we strolled through our neighborhood, I squeezed her hand and said, "Hey, I was thinking, maybe we could invite Laura to visit us in a few months, show her around our city?" Naomi smiled, a small, hopeful grin. "I'd like that. But let's take it slow. We don't want to rush her." "Of course," I agreed, feeling the warmth of possibility bloom in my chest. "Whenever you're ready." She linked her arm through mine. "Thank you," she said softly. "For being patient. For forgiving me." I kissed the top of her head, inhaling the light scent of her shampoo. "I'll always be here. Just, no more airline secrets, okay?" She laughed, a genuine, musical sound that warmed my heart. "Deal." And in that moment, beneath a serene sky free of thunderclouds, I felt something akin to gratitude for the hardships we'd just weathered. Painful as it was, it reminded us that marriage isn't just about sharing joys, it's about facing deep, unsettling truths side by side. We might not have chosen the family secrets that surfaced, or the confusion that followed, but ultimately, confronting them strengthened our bond. Naomi's trip to Bismarck was more than just a flight in secret, it was a journey toward honesty, acceptance, and a new beginning, even if it began with a notification on her phone that threatened to upend my entire world. As we continued walking, the late afternoon sun slipped behind the row of houses, casting long shadows across the pavement. Naomi leaned against me, and I felt the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. We were, in many ways, changed by the last week's revelations. Yet we were also still ourselves. Two people in love, determined to support each other through whatever storms life hurled our way. And that, I realized, was worth far more than any fleeting certainty. It was the kind of bond that endures, airline confirmations and all.